I always love firing up the live stream when the comments are already flowing.
Oh, yeah.
And we got two, one from Mark and one from Mike, talking about my guy, Tommy Cutlets, Syracuse's finest Tommy DeVito. How about it, Chris?
Yeah, I'm fired up, I guess.
That's my quarterback. That's my orange quarterback. I love seeing that. That was so fun watching that Giants game. And a good afternoon, everybody. On Tuesday, December 12th, 2023, we are live once again on DK Pittsburgh Sports for the Southside Beat. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan. Low res, mid res, bad lighting, all
pretty
that.
Good, pretty good. Side. Bad lighting, but pretty good res Corey today. Not too bad.
Yeah, not bad.
You see what I'm stoked about right here? This is what I'm stoked about right here. The SCLSU Mud Dogs.
Oh.
Earning a first round bye in the Popeyes playoffs.
Well, since we're doing that, hold on a second. Hold on. Let me go to mine too then if we're doing this kind of thing. What about the cut and paste component being the 1 seed getting that first round bye? Nice. How do we feel about that at 10-4? Let me look at the standings here. 10-4. I was the only 10-win team.
Nice.
And I led the league in points scored. I led the league in points scored. The next behind me was about 68 points behind. So I'll take that.
I haven't seen how I finished in terms of like points scored and everything, but I'm doing this without. Okay. So here's my thing. I've got Tyreek Hill. He was my first round pick. Okay. Awesome pick. He's been phenomenal. My second receiver is Deontay Johnson. So that hurt for a while because he wasn't playing, and it's been very hit and miss, even when he's played, because the Steelers just are not good on offense, as we've talked about plenty on the show. And then after that, I've got nothing at receiver, like literally nothing. Like, Kadarius Toney is a better option, like, than anything else. Like, it's terrible. I've got good running backs. I've got a good collection of running backs, but I've got nothing else at receiver. So if Tyreek Hill goes down, I don't stand a chance.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's fantasy playoff season. We're all excited. If you made it, congratulations. If you made it, congratulations. I'm in first in 2 leagues for that matter. 3 seed over here, cut and paste component, as you can see right there.
Speaking of which, speaking of playoffs, 4 weeks early today, right?
That's right.
Playoffs 4 weeks early.
That's what Mason Cole said today on the South Side. So today on a Tuesday was more like a Wednesday on the South Side, and that means quarterbacks talk. It's a full day over here. Players are back to their normal practice routines, their normal practice schedules, their normal treatments and everything. And before practice kicked off today, Mason Cole said it. The playoffs are here 4 weeks early. And what that means is there are several teams in the AFC that are 7-6 right now or 8-5. And, of course, the division winners are one thing. And you look at the AFC South and Jacksonville and what they're doing right now. But then you go to the wild cards, and the wild card race is so bunched up right now.
Crazy
with the amount of 7-6 teams. And really, these last 4 weeks of the season are going to be absolutely insane. And this weekend, I'll argue, Chris, no game is bigger than this Steelers-Colts game with respect to playoff implications that will affect the rest of the AFC in that spectrum. But for the Steelers, it's go time now. They're in it now, and this is must-win territory the rest of the season, the rest of the way out, and that's really what Mason Cole, at least, and of course others, are preaching over here on the South Side.
Obviously, this Saturday is a must-win. We're gonna keep saying must-win, but this really is. They've got to win. I would say they might have, just because there are so many teams in the mix that I haven't seen like who all plays each other, but there are 6 teams that are 7-6 right now. So there's a pretty good bet. I mean, obviously Indy and Houston, same division. We know Steelers and Bengals will play each other. So there's probably going to be some of those 7-6 teams that play each other. Obviously Steelers and Colts playing each other. But when you look at that, the only real margin for error that I feel like the Steelers have is that road game in Seattle. That might be the only game you can afford to lose. All the other 3 games, you pretty much got to win in order to really control your destiny. You know, if the Steelers lose that game in Seattle and do happen to win the other 3, they'll finish 10-7. We talked about it at the beginning of the season. 10-7 might be good enough to get you in. 11-6 is most likely good enough to get you in, but 10-7, you're flirting with tiebreakers, and tiebreakers could go either way. And so if they go 10-7, but the loss is to the Colts or the losses to the Bengals, or even the Ravens, any of those 3 teams, but especially the Colts, that would hurt badly because now if you finished it with the same record as them, they have a head-to-head tiebreaker. They can't afford to finish. Now, the only reason Houston is behind the Steelers right now is because the Colts are keeping them down there because the Colts have the tiebreaker over Houston. And the Steelers hold the tiebreaker over Indy. So that's the only reason, because if all of a sudden Indy goes down and the Steelers and Texans finish with the same thing, the Texans have a head-to-head tiebreaker. So it's a big cluster. I won't finish that word. But, you know, it's just. So the Steelers really, really have to win this week. And obviously you kind of have to treat this one game at a time. I go back to look like when it's the 05 Steelers. It's a one-game season. Like, that's kind of the way they have to look at it right now. And so Mason Cole having the mentality that this has to be playoffs now, that's actually the right mentality to have, because that's how they have to treat it if they have any chance of actually making the real playoffs.
I agree. Now, real quick, if we want to do the schedule game, the Steelers, of course, have the Colts, the Bengals, the Seahawks, and the Ravens. The Colts have the Steelers, the Falcons, the Raiders, and the Texans. So the Colts have 2 winnable ones sandwiched in there against the Falcons and Raiders. But that Colts-Texans game in Indianapolis to close the season is massive. Yep. The Texans have the Titans twice, the Browns, and the Colts.
4 AFC games. Yeah.
So the Texans have 4 AFC games, but it's not an easy road either to close the season. The Bills have the Cowboys, the Chargers, the Patriots, and the Dolphins. So 3 AFC games. But again, the Cowboys and the Dolphins on the schedule. So tough one for the Bills. The Bengals have the Vikings, the Steelers, the Chiefs, and the Browns. So 3 AFC games, 2 in the division still to play. And the Steelers still have 2 in the division as well. So this is going to be a wild finish to the end of the season. A couple quick questions here. Mark asks about Jaden Daniels, of course, the quarterback at LSU who just won the Heisman. Will the Steelers have a chance at him? It's possible. It depends on the end of the season. It depends on what teams need quarterbacks that are drafting ahead of him. I mean, we're still a ways away from that, but I mean, you can't rule anything out as of right now. Jim asked, are TJ and Alex still in the protocol? And I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because this is a big thing. Yeah. Chris and I mentioned it yesterday. This is going to be a big, major storyline that we're following really all week. And if you look on our feed right now on DKPittsburghSports.com, you'll see a video of TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith back at practice today. Both of them were in uniform, in helmet, practicing today. Now, I can't say on what capacity. The injury report will say that today, but it is confirmed on video that they were running through individual portion of practice in the early portion in the media viewing window. So they are back at practice. However, they are still in the concussion protocol. That is important to note. They are still in the protocol, so they can't play on Saturday until they clear that protocol. Until an independent doctor, an independent neurologist clears them out of the concussion protocol. So
them partaking in practice is part of the steps of clearing the protocol. They have to be able to show that they can participate in football activity. And I would even say be a full participant. I don't know about the exact amount of practices or amount of time that they have to be a full participant, but I think they even have to get to a full participant status. I don't know the exact language of the protocol, but I do know that them getting back into some sort of football action is part of clearing the protocol.
Right. So there's a question here. Who practiced today? Coming from Matthew. I'll tell you the Steelers practiced today. I can't say definitively who practiced today. That's against the rules. That's against their rules. I am not allowed to say specifically who practiced unless there was a case where TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith were out there in the viewing window that we are allotted. It's about 30 minutes. Yeah. And we just happen to catch them on video. I mean, that's fair game. So whoever's in that video frame, there's your answer. If you want to, if you want an answer to your question, but the injury report will come out. I'm assuming Generally, it's been between like 4 and 4:30. So we'll see. And Matt, they practiced inside today. They practiced inside. Now, I would anticipate that all week, just given they're playing in a dome on Saturday, they're playing indoors, they're playing on turf. So I would anticipate them to practice inside all week.
That's pretty common. When the Steelers, got ready to play the Colts last year, they did that. When they got ready to play the Falcons last year, they did that. That's pretty common. So, there was a comment here earlier. Mark,
no pads, Frankie, no pads.
Oh, Mark said, I don't care if we lose out at this point. We should have handled business while in the driver's seat. Listen, they're still in the driver's seat. They are the 6th seed right now. The season ends today. They are the 6th seed in the playoffs. So they are in the driver's seat. They went out. They're in. It doesn't matter what happens from that point on. They went out. They'll finish 11-6, and they'll be at least the 6th seed. And depending on what happens with the Browns, they could even move up to the 5 seed. And depending even what happens to the Ravens, they could win the division. I doubt it, but they could win the division still technically. So, and the best way to do that is to win out and, hope you get some help, from other teams for the Ravens losing. So,
and by the way, the Browns just lost Jedrick Wills for the season and DeJuan Jones for the season. So they just lost their 2 starting tackles in addition to the other tackle, Jack Conklin, that's been out for the year already. So the Browns are down both their tackles. They're down their quarterbacks. They're down to Joe Flacco at quarterback. And who knows what's going to happen with the Browns to close the season out. Frank asks, how many snaps is Mason Rudolph getting, if any at all? Now, I can't answer that directly.
Yeah.
That is just not in the rule. I can't. That's against the rules if I say directly what kind of snaps he's getting. But what I can speak about is what Mike Tomlin talked about on Tuesday or on Monday rather, and that is that he's not opening the competition. This is going to be Mitch Trubisky's team.
Yep.
And there was the question about, well, is Mason going to get any first team snaps? And Mike Tomlin completely played that off and said, "There's one team. It's a team rep." So. Yeah. You're not going to get that answer out of Mike Tomlin, and I can't give that answer because it's against the rules. So I'm not going to break any rules just to, for the sake of that answer. But again, practice report, injury, that's the only thing we can talk about, and the injury report will dictate that.
Yeah. Again, I'm not imploring this to like be rude or to be mean or anything like that. Just everybody just needs to, whether you want it to happen. It's just kind of the same thing, when Matt Canada was the offensive coordinator, he wasn't getting fired. It's the same thing with Mike Tomlin and people wanting him fired. Just, it's not going to happen. But the whole Mason Rudolph playing, just let it go. Just let it go. If it happens, then great. Happy for you. But please just let it go. You'll save yourself a lot of headaches and stress for trying to, somehow put your will out into the universe. So Mike Tomlin might sense it and be like, maybe I should start Mason Rudolph. Just let it go. Just let it go. Be upset about it if you want to. I'm not going to try to tell you how to live your life or how to root for your team or cajole your team. I don't care, but just let it go. Mason Rudolph is not playing unless Mitch Trubisky gets hurt or he's throwing an interception literally every pass attempt.
Now look, Mason did talk today after practice. Mason Rudolph did. I was not in that scrum. I was off doing other stuff. And he said today, I'm the backup quarterback, and he's the one play away guy, and he knows his role. He knows what he's here for. He knows what he returned for as well. Let's not hide the facts. Let's not hide those tea leaves. And I talked in length about Mason Rudolph, I think, over the last 4 shows. So I'm not going to do it again today. But, that's just where the Steelers are at right now. With the quarterback position, the inside linebacker position, in some ways the outside linebacker position, in some ways, the offensive line at points this year, that's where they are. They're into the reserves. They're into the depth. They're into those practice squad guys. That's why Trace McSorley was signed last week. That's why, Michael Walker is the starting inside line. That's where the Steelers are at right now with a lot of different things. So you're not going to see Mason Rudolph unless Mitch Trubisky gets hurt.
That's Biad says, if I can't will Mason getting a chance, can I will 7 coming back? Not happening, but I will say this, though. Ben Roethlisberger had some very interesting words on his podcast that dropped yesterday, questioning the Steelers' way. you know, and he did it. He didn't do it in a way that was really like tearing anybody down or ripping anybody. I think it was, and I really kind of sense this more from all of the alumni who are speaking up right now. Ryan Clark has said something. Ike Taylor recently said. Antonio Brown not only said something, but it was astute. It was like
being a voice of reason in a way for George Pickens.
Like it was shocking. But I think the reason why those words, whenever these alumni players are coming out and they're questioning, you know, is the Steelers way dead? Do people really know what it's like, what it means to wear the Steelers uniform, to wear the black and gold? And I think it means a little bit more coming from Ben right now, because he was in that locker room 2 seasons ago. I mean, he was in that locker room playing under essentially the same coaching staff that was in place earlier this season. Matt Canada is the OC, Mike Sullivan as the quarterback's coach, Tara Lawson, defensive coordinator. But especially on the offensive side of the ball, same coaching staff. He's been there very, very recently and knows a lot of the stuff that's kind of still there. Now, obviously, he wasn't there last year, and hasn't been there today. And he even said multiple times, "I'm not in that locker room right now." But the fact that he has enough recent knowledge of how things really are going down in the locker room and how they were going down in 2021, not that long ago, and he's saying that kind of stuff, the same kind of stuff that all these other alumni players are saying, it really does kind of make you think of being like, man, like, and he gives like specific examples of being like, listen, you know, about the whole music being played in the locker room thing. He said that was always a thing that got to me. But it's not just because I don't like music. It's because it was just the Steelers' way. And he said that was one little bitty example, and he can give stuff like that. It's just interesting to see, like, when we talk about culture, that's what all these players are talking about, is the culture. And when you see massive disconnect between what the Steelers say that they practice and what actually comes out on the football field and what they put on tape, and there's such a disconnect, part of that is culture. It's not a tangible thing that you can put your finger on and say, this is the reason why, but it is a big, big reason. I really do believe, like fully believe, that if you have a bad culture, if you have a culture that is, you know, cracking at the foundations, you're going to have a hard time executing what you're talking about in meetings and what you're putting on the practice field.
Today, I think a lot of the conversation with players that were spoken to in the locker room, and even with Mitch Trubisky at the podium, were about accountability and leadership and who's taking the reins of that on the offense. And Mitch Trubisky today, he said, you know, he was asked essentially, who are the guys that are taking those and that are saying things and that are trying to rally the troops, so to speak. And the 3 names that Mitch Trubisky gave were Mason Cole, Najee Harris, and Allen Robinson. Those are the 3 names that were brought up when it comes to leadership on this offense. Mm-hmm. Now, notice how Allen Robinson has been here for a total of 13 games. Yeah. Najee Harris is in his 3rd year in the league. Mason Cole has only been here a couple of years. Mm-hmm. So it's not like there's a guy that's been here for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years or whatever it is. There's no Cam Hayward on this offense. There's no TJ Watt on this offense. There's no Pat P on this offense, or Minka for that matter. There's no guy like that on the offense that can speak from experience, that can speak to winning, that can speak to here's what to do and how to do it. Yeah. You know, when it comes to, I think Ben mentioned Steeler way. I think it was phrased in such a way like that.
Yeah. And he talked about like the passing on, because he talked about like when you think like the ultimate Steeler like bar, the Steelers standard, you think about the 1970s. You think about 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, the Steel Curtain, Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Rocky Bleier, Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, Mike Webster, all those guys on offense. And like I can just say Steel Curtain, and that encompasses everything that they did on defense. But it's just those teams. Sure. Now, he even said it. It's like, okay, the further and further you get away from that, the harder it is to try to live up to that standard, because 4 Super Bowls in 6 years just doesn't happen. It's happened one time. That's been it. I mean, you've had a few different teams who have done the 3 and 4 years, and that's a great accomplishment in and of itself, but nobody's done 4 and 6 years. nobody since the Steelers. And so when you talk about, getting further and further away from that, the one way you can combat that is for players to adopt what's passed down to them throughout the years. And that has happened. That did happen through the 80s, through the 90s, through the 2000s. And I see one comment here from Lyle that says, free agency helps tear teams apart. I disagree. Look at some of the players, a couple of the players that were maybe not stars, but very, very important players in those 2000s defenses that won Super Bowls. James Ferrier was a big part of that. He was a free agent signing. Ryan Clark was another one. I mean, again, not James Harrison or Troy Polamalu, but two guys. I mean, that inside linebacking core isn't the same without James Ferrier. And that's, I can't think of a better partner possibly for Troy Polamalu than Ryan Clark. Two phenomenal players that were on that defense that were free agent signings. It's trying to find the right guys. And I think you can find the right guys in free agency. You're not going to bat 1,000. Nobody bats 1,000. But it's trying to find the right guys who understand what it means to be a Steeler. And Omar Khan said that that's a big part of what they look for when they're going through the draft, when they're going through free agency. They got to find out, first off, right now, what it means to be a Steeler now, because right now you don't have a lot of guys who might really, truly understand that. And in my opinion, the only three that I think kind of have an idea of it are Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's about it. Mm-hmm. And none of those guys play offense. Maybe Najee, maybe Pat, because at least Ben played with those guys and tried to show those guys, but I don't know.
Yeah, and you have to keep this in mind too with respect to the offense. When they
Jerome
were
Bettis was traded for, just real quick. Sorry.
Bettis was a trade, yeah. Ben obviously being here forever, and we've talked about Ben with respect to the quarterback room. When you have the head coach and the quarterback and the stability of those two positions for as long as the Steelers did, then you have just about everything else that could just fall right into place. But it's very clear right now that the Steelers don't have that. That synergy, that match, so to speak. And a lot of that has to do with offensive coordinator work as well. And that has to do with employing the right offense and finding success.
Yeah.
And when you have success, then you have longevity. When you have longevity, you have guys that will have been in locker rooms for a long time. And you're not reshuffling quarterbacks, and you're not reshuffling running backs, and you're not reshuffling wide receivers, so to speak. So there's a fine line to walk with all of that. And the fact that the defense has those guys that could be linchpins, and that could be voices, and that could be focal points, and that could be just anybody that has to address a problem with them. They can do it easily. There are many outlets. I think outlet is a key word with this. There's really no outlet for the offense because, Allen Robinson, he's been in the league forever, but what's he going to do? He just got here. He doesn't understand fully, no disrespect to him. He doesn't understand fully, the Steeler way, so to speak, nor, quite frankly, do I think he knows much about it. Mason Cole's only been here a few years. You don't think he knows much about it. Najee Harris has only been here a few years. I don't know if he knows much about it. Now, Najee, to me, and he didn't speak today that I'm aware of. Najee, to me, he's so well respected in that locker room. I think it's why Mitch Trubisky pointed him out. He's so well respected in the locker room. He's one of those guys that doesn't speak often, but when he does, people listen. When he is asked a question and he gives an answer and it's meaningful and thoughtful, it's one of those things that stops you. He's like Minkah to me.
Yeah.
The interview that NFL Network had with Minkah on Good Morning Football on Friday, after the Steelers lost to the Patriots, it was breathtaking stuff from Minkah.
Yep.
Talking about how players want all the rewards but don't want to toil for it, that think they can put the jersey on, the black and gold, and everything's fixed and everything's beautiful and everything's solved and they're going to win them right away. Doesn't work like that. I think that's a huge thing, and I think the offense is still searching for that kind of voice.
I think
the defense has multiple of them.
Yeah, I think when Minkah said that, if you had any questions about whether or not Minkah Fitzpatrick knows what it truly means to be a Steeler, I think that kind of settled all doubts. That to me is that dude understands. He gets it. And like I said, I think Najee could be that guy. I really do. Najee is he's a lead by example and can also lead through using his voice as well. He really is a natural born leader. And it's not just about being a leader. It's also about, trying to do things the right way. And I think he tries to do that. And I think, honestly, when it comes to, if you were to try to sum up the Steeler way into like 2 words, which is hard to do because, and neither one of us, truly know what it really means to be a Steeler. But if I had to kind of maybe try to wrap it up into 2 words the best way that I can, it would be accountability and excellence. It should be excellence because this team chases a Super Bowl every single year. Whether or not they get there, whether or not they even get to the playoffs is beside the point. Obviously, it's a result-based business, and they have to get those results. But they do try to win a Super Bowl every single year. And not many organizations can say that. Some organizations are fine going, 2-3 seasons with punting a bit and having high draft picks, collecting those draft picks and building their teams that way. The Steelers try to find ways to not have to do that and try to remain competitive. And it's one of the main reasons why Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. It doesn't always mean that he's this great head coach, but it also could mean that, listen, the Steelers don't settle for having a losing season.
But that doesn't work unless you don't draft well. And when you look at the first rounds in the last several years,
mm-hmm.
and maybe you can make the exception of Broderick Jones on a wait-and-see level, and if you want to count Joey Porter Jr. in this, that's fine. But over the last several years, right?
Yeah.
But, pick 32, so second round, whatever.
Yeah.
Several of these first-rounders have been colossal misses over the last several years.
Mm-hmm.
And you could even look into the second and third round as well with respect to longevity. There's been a lot of swings and misses in the draft. So when you're taking that approach and you're trying your best to win as often as you can without going into the bottom, it's the Chase Young thing. I keep bringing it up. I feel like over the last couple of weeks, I brought up the Chase Young thing more than anything else. Mike Tomlin once said to Chase Young on the Washington sideline, "We don't stink bad enough. We don't lose bad enough to get a guy like you." The Steelers have not lost enough to get a guy like Chase Young, a franchise impact piece like that on that level, high in the draft. They haven't lost like that in forever.
Yeah.
So, look, I'm not saying they need to have a season or 2 like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can do what the Steelers are doing, but you have to draft well where you're at. You have to scout well and develop well while you're at. Yes, Cedric Green, bad pick. Go back in the time machine. You don't have to go back long to do it.
Well,
so
2020
it's also about the rest of the build.
Was 2020 the year that they forfeited the first round pick or
yes,
gave
they traded it to make
that's what I was saying. They didn't forfeit it; they traded it. So that to me is a good use of a first round pick, even though you didn't get one or you didn't actually have a first round pick. You used it to get Minka. That's a pretty good one.
To Miami to get.
Yeah, if you're using a first round pick to get a franchise caliber player, you did it. You just did one that had a little bit of NFL experience. No, there are still some misses for sure. You're still in wait and see on Broderick Jones, and I would even still say you're still in wait and see on Kenny Pickett.
I agree.
But and then TJ Watt, I thought it was 2017, I think TJ was. But yeah, Devin Bush, God, Devin Bush.
Let me just go back and look. Let's just do this now. Let's just go back and look. We're not going to go too far back.
No,
Cam Hayward's 2011, right?
Yep.
So Cam Hayward's 11, DeCastro's 12.
Yep.
DeCastro's 12, so that's good. Mm-hmm. Jarvis Jones is 13. I think he's in jail now.
Terrible.
14 was Shazier. Obviously, what happened with him.
Yeah.
15 was Bud Dupree. He fizzled out.
But
16 was Artie Burns. 16 was Artie Burns.
Bud Dupree didn't quite live up to first round potential, but he wasn't. I wouldn't call him a bust at all.
Okay.
He turned into a pretty decent player, but Artie Burns terrible, probably even worse than Jarvis Jones.
17 was TJ. Okay. Yeah. 18 yep. Terrell Edmonds.
Yeah.
Not really a first round pick kind of guy. 19 was Devin Bush. Round. Nope.
No.
19 was Devin Bush. Nope.
Yep.
20 was the Minka trade.
Mm-hmm.
21 Najee, 22 Kenny, 23 Broderick. So
again, Najee,
that's where you're at.
Yeah, Najee, I think you're kind of at the point where you kind of know what you got, but again, this kind of goes into and you could kind of throw everybody who's on offense into this And this kind of circles back to the topic of conversation that we've been having all season long. What happens when you have a competent offensive coordinator? What happens when you have a competent offensive coaching staff? Now, I think Eddie Faulkner is a good running backs coach, but again, it all matters about who the next OC is. If the next OC comes in and he knows how to properly run an offense, and it's an offense that can compete in 2024, what if Najee all of a sudden turns into a 1,200-yard back who can also add in 400 to 500 yards of receiving as well? Matt Williamson wrote it in his War Room piece last night. If you haven't read it, go read it. Najee, they haven't even tried to test him as a route runner down the field. Go look at his pro day at Alabama. Go watch the highlights that are in that clip. Dude can run down the field and catch the ball. They don't even try. Look at the catch he had against the Ravens at the end of last season. That's not an easy catch for a running back to make, yet he made it. No, I mean, who says they're even using him correctly? Who says they're using Kenny correctly? Who says they're using George Pickens? They're definitely not using George Pickens correctly. There's a lot of talent on this offense that might just have been handcuffed this entire time. We just don't know because they don't have a good coordinator. So that kind of goes to the excellence part of it. Man, if you have to adapt and become a little bit more of a different offense than you need to do, if excellence is a part of being a Pittsburgh Steeler, then my God, find the best offensive coordinator you can possibly get.
So that said, I like this 23 draft class a lot.
Yes,
I think there's
this
a lot
draft
of
class
potential
does
in this
look very,
23
very
class.
good. Very good.
Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., Keanu Benton. Keanu Benton's been the best rookie in this class for me. Darnell Washington is a role player. Nick Herbig is a role player. Corey Trice obviously injured, and then Spencer Anderson. He's just line depth. So I think the 23 class is really strong, and it can be. But again, the personnel is another thing, and that's going to be a whole other thread in the offseason that I think. I think we could save for, and obviously the offensive coordinator search is going to be another thing. Somebody asked real quick before we go about throwing some new plays in, so to speak, putting some new plays and having some new plays implemented in throughout the week. And I think that's an interesting topic because I brought that up to Mitch Trubisky today, just about how things can change, what can change. When you're this deep in the season, I asked Deontay Johnson the same thing. When you're this deep in the season, how much can you actually change to the playbook? What new can you put in? What can you put in, period, that is different from or that is just a newish wrinkle to anything that they have done already? And the answer really is not much. Yeah. I think that's the consensus between the players is not much. It is what it is at this point. So, I think that you're kind of seeing what you're going to see for the remainder of the year. What they have is what they have. Yeah. And that's going to be what the Steelers do. That's kind of my final thought for the day because we do have to get out of here pretty soon. We're waiting on an injury report still, and we'll see all of that pretty soon here. But a final thought from you, Chris.
Yeah. Listen. To try to paint give you a light at the end of the tunnel. To try to give you some solace here. Here we are. 13 days, less than 2 weeks away from Christmas. There are 4 games remaining this season, and if the Steelers happen to play well enough and get to the playoffs, most likely there are 5 games left in this season. Because I doubt that they're going to do anything if they do happen to get to the playoffs. Then, after that, 4 or 5 games, it's over. It's over, and then we can really kind of shine the light on where because I feel like that this organization is getting to a turning point one way or the other. They're either going to get to a point where they're going to pivot and say, okay, we have to make some serious changes. We can still do things the Steelers way, but we have to kind of modernize it a little bit. We have to find a way to modernize it. Let's go I'm not advocating for this. I have not put a list together yet, but I'm just saying this because anybody with the 49ers is going to be popular right now. Let's go get Clint Kubiak as our new offensive coordinator. He's the passing game coordinator for the 49ers, and obviously Kyle Shanahan is the one. Yeah, they don't have an offensive coordinator because Kyle Shanahan. But let's go get Clint Kubiak and say, screw it. We're going to go with a full-blown 2024 new modern offense, and let that be the excellence that we have on the offensive side of the ball. Again, it's just a name. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that should be the guy. But either way, this is the turning point, whether they're going to try to do that or are they going to continue to do things, try to continue to do the things the same way. Are they going to promote from within? Are they going to find another guy that's their guy to be the next OC? And to me, whichever way that goes, it's going to be either for better or for worse. And I feel like that it's going to help dictate what the future of this franchise is, both in the short term and the long term.
All right, tomorrow's Coordinator Wednesday over here. Eddie Faulkner and Terrell Austin will take to the podium, to the mic stands, and talk about their respective units as the Steelers prep for the Colts. Again, everything's moved up a day this week because of the Saturday game. So Coordinator Wednesday, a shortened practice on Thursday, as is the usual case for the end of the week. And then Friday's off. It's travel day. DK and I are heading to Indianapolis. So
great town. Have a great time, dude. Like, for real. Have you been to Indy before?
Yes. I've been to Indy. I covered Big Ten championship there.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, dude. Indy is a fun town. Man, I'll tell you what, man, like, of all the places that I went to, and I fortunately got to go there twice. So obviously, for the game last year and then the combine, Indy was by far my favorite place to go to, throughout covering the beat last year. By far.
Yeah, I love that city.
Indy.
I love that city.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. I will be probably here on the south side still, timing-wise. I think that's what it lines up. I might be late. So Chris will be here at 3. I might be here at 3. I might be at 3:15. Who knows? We'll see. But DK and Ramon coming up in about 25 minutes or so for the Ramon Foster Show, where you found this. Remember, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify on playback 24/7. And again, we're live 3 p.m. Monday through Friday right here on DK Pittsburgh Sports on YouTube. So for Chris Halicke, my name is Corey Crisan. This has been that program, the Southside Beat. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We're on to Wednesday. Cheers, everybody.